everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this very first webinar, Healing with Cannabis webinar. Carol's Oils in collaboration with Cheeba Cannabis Academy and Medical Marijuana 411. I will be your host for tonight. My name is Dr. Carmen James, and I will be joined in a few moments by my co-host, Sharon. And I just wanted to welcome Sharon onto the webinar platform with me. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Carmen. How are you doing?
Lovely to have you, Sharon. And it's always a pleasure to hang out with you and just pick your brain because you're so knowledgeable and you have so much experience. So perhaps, Sharon, you can go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody for those of you who don't know you.
Hi, everybody out there. It's really exciting to be working on this project with Cheeba. What we hope to show over the next 10 webinars is really how doctors and patients can get education and make educated decisions with their journey with cannabis as a medicine.
Amazing. And we look forward to it. We're super excited to jump into tonight's conversation and our very first topic. So the topic for today's webinar, I think it's a fantastic place to start, don't you think? Because we're kind of setting the stage for all of the rest of the content that's coming up in the next few webinars that we have planned. But the topic for tonight's webinar is the Section 21 application for medical cannabis. So I'm going to welcome I believe it's one more guest, and I think another guest will be joining us a little bit later. But we're going to welcome our first guest onto tonight's webinar, and Cheryl will just introduce herself. And if Jackie's here as well, she can go ahead and introduce herself. And then we're really just going to jump in and start talking about Section 21. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people are really not familiar with because it's not something that we use as healthcare practitioners. We don't use it on a daily basis. So it is something that we have to kind of to learn about and unpack, and there is lots to unpack. So I'm very excited for our conversation and for the different topics that we will be discussing tonight. So first and foremost, what is Section 21? And I think it is important. Oh, there you go. There's Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl. Go ahead and welcome. And there's Jackie. Yay. Welcome. Well, Cheryl, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cheryl Brockelbank. I am the responsible pharmacist for THC Pharmacy based in Johannesburg, being the first fully operational cannabis pharmacy in Africa.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm in such good company tonight, I just have to say. Welcome, Cheryl. And Jackie, please go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackie Ramage. I'm the responsible pharmacist for a licensed cannabis cultivation facility in the Western Cape. And I'm coming to you live from load shedding. So if I bomb out, it's my data that's gone.
Oh, man. Wow. These are the joys. But look at us. Hey, we're pushing through, and kudos to you for making it despite the load shedding. I really hope that we manage to keep you on for the remainder of the webinar. So as I already mentioned, tonight's topic is the Section 21 application. So for those of you who don't know, there's only one way currently for patients in South Africa to access medical cannabis, and that is via a doctor who prescribes medical cannabis and applies for them to be able to access it via Section 21. Now, for those of you who know, I think we've been speaking a lot about Section 21 recently with regards to ivermectin for COVID-19 and all these things. But ultimately, Section 21 is the way that we apply for medication that is not registered for use in South Africa. And so ultimately, because medical cannabis is not available, on a regular prescription, we have to go through this application process. So I just wanted to very quickly touch on that application process, what it entails, just so that we're all on the same page, because I think there is a very rich discussion that we can get into afterwards. But just to catch the audience up and just to make sure that we all understand that this is really the only way that patients can legally access medical cannabis in South Africa currently. And we're going to talk about our feelings and our thoughts and what we think about that a little bit later. But the way it works is that a doctor has to assess a patient and decide whether they actually qualify for medical cannabis. And then once they decide, yes, this is a suitable patient, I've decided that I want to prescribe X medical cannabis for this person, I'm then going to go ahead and fill in an application form. Now, the application form is going directly to SAHPRA, which is the South African Health Products Regulatory Association. And basically, SAHPRA has now actually streamlined this process. So you can do the entire application online, but you have to fill in an application form. And the form is submitted to SAHPRA accompanied by a registration fee or an application fee. And that fee is 350 Rand, whether you are applying for 1 month supply of cannabis or whether you are applying for 6 months supply of cannabis, right? The application fee is standard. You have to also supply SAHPRA with information about the product that you want to prescribe. So you have to provide a product brochure, you have to provide information about the chemical constituents of the product, the pharmaceutical constituents of the product, any preclinical data that you may have access to, any toxicological results or data that you may have access to as well. You then also need an informed consent form that is signed by the patient. And this is really just to confirm to SAHPRA that you have educated your patient on medical cannabis, but also that your patient is aware that the product that they are actually applying to access is not registered for use in South Africa. So it's kind of like a waiver that SAHPRA insists that everybody completes. You then also need to describe any pending registrations that this product may have. So if perhaps it's about to be a registered product in another country or even in South Africa, you need to provide information about that. You also need to provide information about how the product was manufactured. So you have to provide SAHPRA with proof that good manufacturing practices were utilized in producing this product. And you also have to provide reasons as to why we cannot actually use any other medication for this person's particular medical condition. And then any supporting information that you can supply to SAHPRA as well as a healthcare practitioner, as a doctor who's prescribing medical cannabis, any supporting information on that patient is going to support your application. But then it doesn't end there, because if you have, let's say you submit everything and SAHPRA says, yes, go ahead, they approve your application. Now your patient has started using medical cannabis. You also then have to report on any adverse events that that patient may have. And you also have to submit every 6 months, you have to submit a progress report on that patient. And if your patient stops using medical cannabis for whatever reason, either you've completed their treatment or the patient terminates because it wasn't working for them or whatever, then you have to submit another report describing why the patient either completed medication or completed their treatment or terminated. And then over and above that, SAHPRA can still ask you for additional information. They can say they want more data about the patient, more data about the medication that you're prescribing. They can go ahead and inspect a facility, the facility where you're actually getting the product from. They can even withdraw their approval after you have received it. So just by what I'm describing, you can tell that number one, it's a lot, right? It's a lot of admin. It's a laborious, time-consuming, very convoluted process in order to actually get a patient approved for medical cannabis. And then still at the end of the day, your application can only last for a maximum of 6 months. And you still have to keep proving that this patient needs to continue on treatment. So unfortunately, this is what we are sitting with at the moment. And we are here tonight to unpack our thoughts, our feelings, and our opinions on what we think about the Section 21 application process. But also, if we could, decide, and if we could do it differently, what would we decide? What would we want to see happening in this space. So I'm going to open up the conversation, and perhaps we can start right at the beginning, which is, what are the medical benefits or the benefits of medical cannabis for a patient who potentially is looking at starting on this treatment, or for a doctor perhaps who's sitting in their practice and they're at their wits' end because they've tried everything and nothing is working for their patient, and now they're considering medical cannabis. So perhaps we can start, I'm not sure, Sharon, if you'd like to jump in and give us a bit of your experience, because you have a wealth of experience as a traditional doctor treating, I suppose, thousands of patients with medical cannabis. But perhaps you can share with us some of the benefits of medical cannabis.
Absolutely, Carmen, I'd love to. So really, at the end of the day, I have to say that medical cannabis has been around in South Africa for 15, 20 years already. And I think it's been the patient that's actually initiated this. The medical doctors just started seeing patients arriving on this product already, it's been wonderful that it worked that way around, because for me, it's patient first always. So there are so many diseases at the moment. The thing that I specialize in is cancer, obviously. And with cancer, I can tell you within a matter of hours, a patient starts having incredible relief with appetite, with insomnia, with depression, pain relief. There's a lot of research on using cannabis with chemo. So there are so many amazing uses. Seizures. Right now with all the COVID things, we're going to be doing the webinar on cannabis and COVID. It's unbelievable what cannabis can do for a COVID patient, what it can do for a cytokine storm. It just goes on and on. But this is a product that nobody has ever died from. And it's something for the chronic diseases that is being used anyhow at the moment, unfortunately. And it's like the Wild West out there. So I'm truly grateful for the Section 21. I'm grateful that we have the opportunity for this, that patients have the opportunity. Doctors are ready, they're excited and ready to move ahead of this because they're living with it already. And I think the biggest place one would see the desperate need of it is go into any chemo ward where they're busy administering chemo, and I guarantee you the main topic and subject in that ward will be, where are people getting their medical cannabis from? So, all I'd like to say at the end of the day, the horse has bolted the stable, the bullet's through the window, guys. Doctors want this. We just need the laws that are on paper. They're so lovely on paper, but that's where they are. We need them to be rolling out for the patient now.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't agree with you more, Sharon. And I think that it's about time. I think that, one of the things that's so frustrating is that patients need help now, and yes, we have the Section 21. Fortunately, it is accessible now, but sure, there's such a huge need for medical cannabis and a huge need for education as well of healthcare professionals, because we really didn't learn a lot about this at medical school. We weren't taught or trained. Cheryl, perhaps in your experience, before, you're now leading the first dispensary in Africa, you said?
Yes.
That's incredible. That is amazing. But before you actually now walk into this dispensary as the lead pharmacist of the first dispensary in South Africa, how much did you actually know? How did you learn about medical cannabis?
Well, I have to be very honest. My son taught me what I know. My son has been dealing in this for the last 8 years. And he saw a vision last year, and he decided it's time to go the legal route. It took a long time, working with the government to get certificates, registrations, Department of Health. It took close to about 18 months to do it. But yeah, you know what? It's so nice to know that people can come to the pharmacy and they don't have to worry about who's watching them, who's going to see them outside. Do they have to go home and sit in a little room, close the curtains and smoke their cannabis there? Because they can now legally have it on their person. We at the pharmacy supply a medical cannabis card, and if they are stopped, it is you can show it to the authorities. They can go back and trace where they've got the cannabis from. We have a seed to sale documentation of where it comes from. The facility where we grow the cannabis is and has been inspected by SAPRA and approved by SAPRA. So we don't have any problems that it's the guy on the corner that's selling to us and we're packing it. It comes already packaged, everything like that. There's a choice of different strains for different treatments, and yeah, it's very interesting. As I say, from where I've come, I don't know. It's just so sad that it's taken so long to get to this point.
I totally agree with you. Now, I have an exciting announcement just to interject here on the back of Cheryl's incredible journey and incredible story from where she comes from to where she is now. We are giving away 2 prizes during this webinar. So we're going to be announcing 2 winners at the end of this webinar. So please stay tuned all the way to the end to hear, in case you are the lucky winner of one of 2 of these prizes. The first prize that we are giving away is a beautiful tincture of Carol's oil. It's a THCA tincture. That is prize number 1. And prize number 2 is a medical cannabis course for healthcare professionals. And what's exciting about this course is that it has 20 CPD points attached. So anyone who needs to top up on their CPD points, as healthcare professionals, we all know how important that is. Please go ahead and stay till the end because you could have won one of those prizes. So I'm going to jump in and ask Jackie now. When I was explaining how the fact that at the moment, it's only doctors who are registered with the HPCSA that are permitted to prescribe medical cannabis legally in South Africa. That leaves a whole lot of healthcare practitioners off the table, right? So your neighborhood pharmacist, your perhaps your physiotherapist, perhaps the vet, right? The vet that's looking after your animals. We're restricting a huge number of healthcare professionals with regards to access to this powerful, incredible medicine. What are your thoughts on the fact that only doctors are allowed to prescribe medical cannabis at this stage?
Carmen, I personally have a problem with it. Really, at the end of the day, if you think about the traditional healers in South Africa, they are still handling a huge part of our sick people in the country. The traditional healers have been working with cannabis for thousands of years. Culturally, they truly have a knowledge of it from a quantum perspective, I could actually say. So it is a huge problem. Again, remember, I like to put the patient first. And if we put the patient first, we would open this up so that anybody that is trained and qualified, that's all we need, is right now what doctors are screaming for worldwide, is proper, solid, scientific medical training. And there absolutely is solid science behind this. If you start looking at Dr. Raphael Mashulam, Dr. Christina Sanchez, Dr. Manuel Guzman, Dr. Ethan Risa, I could go on and on. With doctors that have done clinical studies, that are working on this for. Christina and Manuel Guzman have each been doing this for 30 years. Raphael Mashulam is going on 50 years. So, let's put the patient first for a change, guys, and let's make this available. It's never killed anybody. It's not a gateway drug. We know that it is a gateway drug to the fridge. It creates the munchies. And that
I love that. A gateway drug to the fridge.
is,
I love that.
the past 40 years, I have never, ever, after thousands of patients, I've never had a patient phone me and say, "Gee, Sharon, can you fix me up with some heroin?" Never, ever, ever. So honestly, I think we need to get back to the science here and open this up to anybody that is trained.
I love this. I saw a meme, I think, that said patients looking for medical cannabis are not looking to get high, they're looking to get help.
Yes, beautiful.
And that stuck with me, yeah. So Jackie, I mean, look, medical cannabis at the moment, okay, it's a bit of a weird situation, right? Because we've got health products that contain CBD or Schedule 0, right? That's why we see them all over the shelves in the local pharmacies and that type of thing, mixed with all kinds of things. And there's restrictions on how much of that you can take in a day. So 20 milligrams of CBD, no more, is the current rule. Then we have the medical grade CBD, so higher doses that are sitting at Schedule 4. And then we've got THC that's sitting at a Schedule 6. So as a pharmacist, I mean, having a wealth, many, many years of experience with Schedule 6 medications, right? You've got things like morphine, methadone, methylphenidate, all Schedule 6. How does cannabis or THC in cannabis as a Schedule 6 compare to other Schedule 6 medications that you would be dispensing or have dispensed previously in a traditional pharmacy?
So, Carmen, thank you for the platform and thank you for the questions. I think what's important, I'd like to comment or answer you from both perspectives. From a professional perspective, that I am a pharmacist and I dispense obviously Schedule 6s, but also from a patient perspective. As we discussed before, I've been in a position where for 7 months of chemotherapy, the only thing that was discussed on a Tuesday in the chemo ward, as Sharon said, was where everybody was getting their relief, their medicinal cannabis relief from. And this was pre-2018, so I went through this process in 2016. So the High Court hasn't even made suggestions yet towards where we would be going with our legislation. And our dear friend Myrtle Clark, who was part of that team, I remember her saying at a symposium afterwards that we must be careful what we wish for, because in this industry we've been lobbying, advocating, giving as much evidence as possible. And once this has come to the fore as now become regulated products, we've seen so many licenses being issued, we've seen the first dispensary in Africa. Cheryl, kudos to you for your hard work. But we must, again, be careful what we wish for. And the industry is in such an infancy stage in South Africa that we tend to want to overshoot the mark. I mean, Sharon, you've said, that the bullet's gone through, and we can learn from how the other countries have possibly made their mistakes in terms of jumping that gun or sending the horse out of the stable. So we're very, one thing that I did learn sitting in that ward as a patient, but then also with my professional mind thinking at the same time, is that patience is the ultimate superpower. From practically sitting there, Sharon, you work with your chemo patients, and patients who've been diagnosed with cancer, you never really know how long you have. The doctor might give you a prognosis of so long, but the universe gives you, as we said the other night, the universe gives you what you need, not what you want. And these patients, the laborious process of Section 21, I know I'm answering your question in a very long way, but when I started practicing as a pharmacist more than 25 years ago, there was actually a Schedule 6 THC available that didn't require a Section 21. And I remember dispensing it twice or three times before it was withdrawn and recalled off the market. And all those 20 odd years ago, we've now almost come full circle, but we've added a couple more layers of regulation to this Schedule 6 item. So by THC, when I start speaking about regulations, and what you must remember is that I can only comment and say what current regulation is, and then I can give you a wish list. And so current regulation and legislation says a Section 21 doctor needs to prescribe medicinal cannabis. What that patient needs to go through to get that Section 21 is an admin-intensive procedure. Whereas with a normal schedule, when I say normal Schedule 6, I refer to the other Schedule 6s that you refer to, the methylphenidate, methadone, codeine, morphine. They can go to any GP or their specialist and they can get a Schedule 6 prescription. They can go to a local pharmacy who stocks their Schedule 6 products just in a locked cupboard. So what my question is that why do we need the Section 21? I understand that we don't have registered products in South Africa, and so that would be the slow call to SAHPRA, is for us to sit and for them to collaborate with the medicinal cannabis industry so that our patients aren't sitting on every Tuesday, talking about around which corner they're getting their medication from. And even when they get it, are they sure of what it is? Because remember, as healthcare professionals, our absolute directive and what we stand for, your Hippocratic oath we take as doctors, our oath we take as pharmacists, as healthcare workers across the board, nurses, vets, psychologists, psychiatrists, whoever you are who have an admonishment to your patients, is a safe, effective, consistent, and accountable medication. And that's what we really, really need to hone in on. And that's our message that we would like to, as a collaborative and as a collective as healthcare professionals, to present to SAHPRA and say, we understand completely where the industry is in its infancy, but we would like the end point of what we studied for, what we did for, why we want to help people, is the end point is our patient safety. As Sharon has already said, I've got a graph that stares at me every day in my office, number of deaths per drug, and it's got everything on it, from all the opioids to the cannabinoids to alcohol to everything on it. And it's almost like one of those billboards that you keep on driving past every day and you eventually stop seeing it. But that's the flattest line is cannabis. So there's been no recorded or reported deaths from cannabis, and the rest of them go incrementally from there. So it's a really long answer to your short question, and there's lots of unpacking to do. But I do think that as healthcare professionals, at the very inception point of what we do, we have to remember the safety of our patients. And as you mentioned, there's a plethora of products available over the counter as complementary and supplementary medicine, which aren't necessarily doing themselves a disservice, but we must be cognizant of the patient, because as cannabis as an industry, we don't want patients to be using products or supplementary products that are essentially not actually having an outcome or an output for the patient. And I'm not saying that they aren't. Please don't misinterpret me. I'm just saying that the full impetus and the full value of cannabis needs to be discussed. We need to educate our healthcare professionals. You guys have touched on it, and it's a very small handful. My greatest concern, again, is the patient at the end point, because not all patients have immediate access to their doctors, their psychiatrists, their psychologists, their vets, their ENT, whoever, their oncologists. They don't have immediate access. So your immediate first line of defense, or your first line of infection, is your pharmacist. Your pharmacist is the person who your person comes to say, hey, or phones and says, I need some advice. I can't get hold of my doctor. I need a consultation. I need some information. And there's a lot of pharmacists out there who have voiced their concern to me that am I equipped to deal with information about this product, about cannabis, about medicinal cannabis, about THC, about CBD? You know, is there somebody I can go to quickly and call who's going to give me the proper advice and the right advice and the pertinent advice? And that's my concern, because I think of patients like, I think if we all think of our moms or our dads or our grandparents, bless those who still have grandparents. I know I don't, and I wish they were still around. But my grandfather might be joking with me working in the cannabis industry. He was a professor, but I digress. The point is that we want our patients to be getting the right kind of information, and those patients are our mothers, are our fathers, are our grandparents. There are our young over 18 patients, and we want them to be getting the best value of information and the most direct information possible. So my soapbox.
But you bring up some incredibly important points, and I think that the thing that we really, from what I can hear, Sharon and yourself highlighting, is the importance of educating our healthcare professionals. And we're going to touch on just how we can do that in a moment. But I just want to read out some results from 2 of the polls that we've been running so far on this webinar. I hope everyone's having a good time and enjoying themselves and, just lapping up everything that everyone's saying, because like I said, I'm in such good company tonight. So I appreciate all of you for being here and for sharing from your knowledge and your experience, not only as professionals, healthcare professionals, but also as patients, because I think we all have a story. We all have a story of somebody close to us, or even if it's our story, about medical cannabis or even if we didn't have access to medical cannabis or didn't know about medical cannabis, we perhaps have a question in our mind, like maybe a family member who perhaps had a cancer diagnosis or some other dreaded disease, and you ask yourself, if this person had access to medical cannabis, what could the potential outcome have been? And so here are the results of the first poll. The first poll was, is it legal to use medical cannabis in South Africa? And the results are quite interesting, because 72% of people said yes, but interestingly, almost 20% of people said no. And I think that is fascinating, because it goes to show that we really do need to continue this conversation about education, right? We had about 9% of people who said they're unsure. So, probably about, just under 30% of people really just like either thinking that it's illegal or not certain about whether it actually is accessible legally in South Africa. So the answer is, of course, yes. Medical cannabis is accessible legally in South Africa. However, you have to get it prescribed by a doctor. And then another poll that we ran was, is medical cannabis covered by medical aid? And so maybe I would really want to hear you guys' opinion on this, right? Because I have high hopes that we are headed in a direction where one day medical cannabis will actually be covered by medical aids. But the answers to the poll, 9% of people said yes. I wish it was the case. 68% of people said no, and 24% of people were unsure. So perhaps, Cheryl, do you think that we will ever live in a world where medical cannabis will be approved and paid for by medical aids? What do you think about that?
Yes, I do. I do think it's going to come to that point, yes. Because people will see it being just as beneficial as any other medication. And they can't discriminate. So I definitely do believe, as you say, once they get educated and they know the benefits in that of the medicinal cannabis, the medical aids will come and they will pay for that.
I think that I really cannot wait for that day, because if right? So this is a huge problem, because we were talking about the over-the-counter stuff that's available in the pharmacies, and again, as Jackie said, not to discredit anything. Okay, of course, we all know that there are some really bad products out there, and it's very important to have a certificate of analysis and really understand what it is that you are ingesting or inhaling or taking into your body as medical cannabis. But ultimately, and I think I've now lost my train of thought. What I was going to say about access to. Oh yes, I was going to say that again.
We were chatting about the medical aid and having access.
Yes, and having access, yes, via the medical aid. I really do think that, unfortunately, if you're going to get a good product, well, whether it's unfortunate or not, good products are expensive. They are so expensive. And the reason is because they're expensive to make. And so if you've got a patient who is destitute and really needs to have their medicine, but they can't afford to pay cash for their medicine, right? So you go there, you get your doctor to do your Section 21 application. Your application gets approved. Now you have to pay a couple $1,000 every month to access your medical cannabis. It's not affordable for some people. And so I do think the day when we do see the medical aids coming on board is going to be a very, very happy day for a lot of people. I'm going to read one last poll result. Sorry, was somebody about to say something?
I was just going to comment on your medical aid, but I'll let you finish. It's not a problem. I've made a note. Thank you.
No, go for it before I read the next poll while we're on the topic.
So what you might find is that how the medical aids did work, or how they work with a lot of conditions, specifically chronic conditions. The PMBs, you'd be familiar with PMB, which is prescribed minimum benefits. And there are currently 27 conditions that fall under that. What you might find is that, when I spoke of my wish list or my logical progression to where we would want to be, is that your condition would be a prescribed minimum benefit, and then your doctor would then motivate for the Section 21 to have cannabis under that condition. So, for example, my cancer was a prescribed minimum benefit, and then treatment would be under that. And then if I had an additional medication, a registered product that I required, my doctor would then motivate under that condition, under that prescribed minimum benefit condition, that my medical aid would then possibly pay for that. It was at that point, it was a special a white blood cell and neutrophil injection that I required to have. So they would motivate for that. It would be covered under that, under the PMB, and then I would perhaps have to pay in just a shortfall in terms of the costing of the medication. So that is when I mentioned wish list, that is where I see a projection possibly going for the medical aid for that.
Oh, that actually sounds like a workable solution to the problem. I know Sharon has another idea.
A reasonable one.
A reasonable one, yes, exactly. And one that can be easily implemented because it's already happening for other conditions and other medications. So it wouldn't be like an extra step or something, over and above what doctors are usually accustomed to doing for their patients anyway. I know Sharon has another idea of where she thinks that the medical cannabis should fit, and maybe we'll discuss that in a second. But I just want to read out another result. And then I just got a message that we have our first prize winner. So the next poll was, what is the current daily dose limit for Schedule 0 CBD? I did mention it earlier. So for those who were listening, the answer is 20 milligrams a day. So 55%, I'm so disappointed in you guys. Only 55% of you were actually paying attention. And you said 20%, but 12% of you said 40 milligrams, 9% of you said 60 milligrams, and 24% of you were unsure. So do you guys want to know who is the prize winner? So we have our first prize winner, and congratulations, you have won yourself a tincture of THCA oil from Carol's Oil, and the winner is surname. Your name is David Bayeva. I hope I haven't butchered your surname. I'm so sorry about that. But Yay! So perhaps, Sharon, I have a question for you, right? We're going to go into where you think that medical cannabis fits in with regards to how we should be prescribing, right? But I have a question. We know that there's a dire need, right? So patients are needing medical cannabis today, right? But we also know that doctors, healthcare professionals, by and large, are not well educated with regards to how to actually advise, prescribe, manage, treat their patients who require this vital medicine. How do we bridge that gap? What are your thoughts on how we can bring the rest of the medical fraternity up to speed?
Carmen, for me, I think it's back to training. I mean, there are some doctors that really know a lot about cannabis in South Africa, but unfortunately, they have had to really be very quiet about it. And these are people that had patients come to them where they've actually seen a patient. I can actually mention one patient because she was my mom, arrived with pancreatic cancer, and 8 months later not have pancreatic cancer. That doctor sat up and started studying. So for me, what I would...
That'll make you study. That'll make you study.
What I really think is many doctors are experiencing this. Many doctors have got patients coming. It is a complex plant. There's no two ways about it. You have to work in the quantum field. It doesn't revolve around Newtonian science at all, I could say. So online training, as much training. I'm excited about the webinars we're doing now because a lot of people are asking for different subjects to discuss. I think just to get the knowledge to the doctors so that they're comfortable. And again, I always say there's a simple science here. The science that we have that is working is the same science in France, in Portugal, in America, in Israel. So just get training. I would love to see compounding pharmacists holding stock of cannabis. Actually, I'm really excited that SAPRA is rolling out to Section 21. I'm just concerned that thousands of patients today are waiting, and I'm not exaggerating, Carmen. Well, thousands and thousands. People are lurking the streets trying to buy oil from dangerous places. I think a cancer patient has enough drama. A parent having a child having seizures, they have enough drama. Let's just roll this out so that we know that there is a compounding pharmacist that's sitting with stock. So a patient can come in, the product can be prescribed. Yes, I'm all for standardized products. I'm all for every kind of certificate of GMP, GAP. You can't have medicine that's random. It cannot be random. But my concern is that it's not going to roll out quick enough. As I said, I'm grateful that we have the Section 21, but I don't know that it's doing enough for the patients today.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I think that that actually segues quite nicely into our question, one of our polling questions, which was, how long is a medical cannabis script valid for? And I'm very proud of our audience because most of them got this answer right. So 77% of our audience said for 6 months, 7% said for 2 weeks, and another 17% said they are unsure. So at the moment, what we have is Section 21. Is it perfect? No. Do we think that it could be done differently? Absolutely. But at the moment, what we have is doctors who need to be trained. We've established that from this webinar, certainly. We knew that before, but I think that, as we chart the way forward, doctors need to be trained. You need to be educated. If you're a healthcare provider, your patients, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not, they want to know about medical cannabis, right? So it's up to you the onus is actually on you and the responsibility is on you to actually educate yourself so that you can empower your patients to be able to use this medicine in a way that is safe for them, right? We also know that there are some limitations. Of course, we heard how admin intensive the application is, but it also just out of interest from a turnaround time point of view, for anybody out there who's wondering how long it actually takes to hear back from SAHPRA, they actually make a commitment on their website to give you an answer within 24 to 48 hours. And the reports that I've heard from doctors who do these applications frequently tell me that they actually are very good at getting back to you within the prescribed amount of time. The only time really where SAHPRA will take an extended period of time is when you're applying for a medication that perhaps needs more investigation, maybe they need additional information, further investigation, or further supporting documentation from you. The problem then becomes, how do we actually get that medication to the patient? Because SAHPRA wants us to prescribe medication, or perhaps we should say it like this. The majority of applications that are going through to SAHPRA are for imported medications. And so there you have a delay with regards to getting the product to your patient and how long it actually takes to do that. That's something that kind of boggles my mind, because we all know that there are really good products that are available in South Africa. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But ultimately, then what needs to happen is that every 6 months, your patient needs to reapply. And so we can see that the process is, it's quite detailed. We know that the process can have a lot of roadblocks. But perhaps, Cheryl, maybe you can share with us, in a perfect world, what would this process look like to you? I know that Jackie and Sharon have shared how they would like to see their patients accessing medical cannabis. How do you feel?
Well, ultimately, yes, to be able to do away with the Section 21s. But, that will also come in time, I'm quite sure. Our experience that we've had with SAHPRA is the turnaround time is not quite 48 hours, but they are working on it, and the time has got less and less and less. But what I think should happen is something like the doctor, if you get a script for the cannabis, while you submit your application to SAHPRA, they should be entitled to at least like a month's medication so that they can start with it and then wait for the SAHPRA applications. So the authorization from SAHPRA, which I think is a good option, because then the patient can start taking the medication straight away. They have access straight away.
Fantastic. So I think that we just have about just under 10 minutes left. I've got another prize winner. Yay! So our second prize winner is actually winning our medical professional cannabis course that has 20 CPD points associated with it. And the winner of this prize is Mohammed Shabir Suleiman. Yay! So it's actually interesting that Mohammed won, because he actually asked a question. And here's his question, right? The question is, thank you for the education. How do practitioners educate themselves on what strain and what dose will work for a particular disease? Love that question. So, anyone? Sharon, I see you smiling. You're on mute. You're on mute, Sharon.
We have a really beautiful curriculum for training medical doctors. It goes through the genetics. It goes through the different ways of making cannabis, but most importantly and most valuable information we're sharing is the dosage protocols. We are sharing protocols that are backed by years and years of actual working with patients with solid science, linking patients to EEGs, seeing how long it takes for products to go through. So, I lost my train of thought now.
You were talking about how amazing your training courses are, and that everybody who wants to know about medical cannabis should join one of your trainings.
Absolutely, we have it's there in their beautiful training sessions. We're improving it all the time. The documents, as you say, we are getting CPD points for these. Our training is peer reviewed. We've not just thrown something together, and it's based on solid science. So once a medical doctor has had this training, it's the beginning of him understanding, and he will be able to then explain. For example, just if I could share one thing for the sake of every single breast cancer patient out there. Breast cancer patients are running out getting oil from anybody. If it's an estrogen-driven cancer, you can actually make the tumors grow if you're not using a particular ratio of oil. So this is the information the doctors want. They also want to know that they want to know how it's metabolized. They want to know, and this is everything that we go through in the training, guys. It will make such a difference to a medical doctor. He can then confidently back the patient on and communicate with other medical doctors that have, quite frankly, been working in this field for many years in South Africa.
Absolutely. I think the word that stuck out for me from what you just said is confidence, because I think that automatically, you know, when a patient walks in the door and they ask you about medical cannabis and you have no idea, you may be swayed to kind of shut them down or dismiss them or not engage, as opposed to a patient walks in and you are knowledgeable about medical cannabis, then you have a rich conversation with your patient. And you can actually, as you said, hold that patient's hand and guide them through the dosing, because medical cannabis it's a plant, but it is not the same plant for each person, right? So it works differently in everybody's body. And so there's no one size fits all, basically, with any botanicals, but in particular with cannabis, because of our own endocannabinoid systems. And so patients really do need you to guide them through a treatment protocol, different from whether, you know, when they pick up a supplementary or complementary medicine off the shelf, you know, that can really be taken as a supplement. But when we're talking about medicinal cannabis, they really need a knowledgeable doctor who's going to guide them through how to actually do it correctly. So I believe the last polling question is, what is the schedule of THC? And yet again, I'm very proud of our audience, because 69% of you said Schedule 6, and you would be right. Well done. We had 3% who said Schedule 0. Oh no, we need to have this webinar all over again. 6% of you said Schedule 1, and 9% of you said Schedule 2. Fantastic. So thank you so much, guys. I think that this has been a really, really incredible, rich discussion. But I do have one last question that I want to leave you all with, and perhaps your final closing remarks. So we'll just go around and perhaps share what we each think about this. And so the final question that I have for each of you, so you're going to answer the question and then just maybe share your last, 10 seconds that you want to leave with the audience, which is, does the current Section 21 cater for patients' medicinal cannabis needs today? So Jackie, you can go first.
Sorry, Carmen, I lost you for a second there. Does it cater for?
Does it cater for patients' needs today? The current Section 21.
I don't think so, but I think we must keep patients as a superpower in our minds and educate first and then roll out to the patients. I think we need to tread very well and confidently, but with caution.
Awesome.
Cheryl?
I agree. Cheryl, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think I would say yes. Because first of all, of the turnaround time, and
through education.
Yeah. And the other thing is education. I genuinely believe education. Doctors
Awesome.
and patients.
Sharon, your final remarks? We have literally 1 minute left.
In answer to your original question, I personally don't think it caters for it right now. I know that there's not THC medicine available for the patient on the Section 21 right now in South Africa. And unfortunately, again, I'm the one that always harps on about cancer, but CBD does not cause apoptosis of a cancer cell. THC causes apoptosis of the cancer cell. So I think we just need more products out there. But it's a beginning, guys. It's a start. At least we're having this conversation. Good heavens, 20 years ago, would I be CEO of the cannabis plant behind me having a conversation with an amazing doctor and 2 pharmacists?
No, chances are not. Guys, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I just want to say a huge thank you to Sharon, to Jackie, to Cheryl for joining me. You guys have been amazing. I'm sure that the audience thoroughly enjoyed this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you guys. Please spread the word. Sign up to our next webinar and please share with a few friends so that we can have even more education on our next one. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Bye.